Hi, my name is MK. I'm the founder of Filipino Home-Based Moms or FH Moms. What we do is we help Filipino mothers inside and outside the Philippines to get an online job, and now we are expanding to helping more Filipino mothers without access to the internet by giving them home-based livelihood opportunities.
Before kasi kami na nag-home-based job, parang living paycheck to paycheck kami. Sahod niya, oy, happy na agad yan, yung matitira. Or nung nag-home-based na kami, doon nakapag-ipon na kami. Nakapag-church wedding kami. Tapos nagkaroon na kami ng savings. Nagkaroon na rin kami ng investments, tsaka insurance. Nakapag-bili na rin kami ng house.
Dito kasi sa pag nagtrabaho kami sa bahay, mas maraming time na nga, sa kids, sa kanya. Kaya, ayun. Hanggang ngayon, masaya pa rin naman ako sa pag-online job.
Since sobrang hirap, importante ko na talaga yung talim ng job, na-experience ko na rin yung discrimination sa work. Until October 2018, I was invited to be an inspirational newspaper and you were one of them. So yun, na-meet kita. And then doon ako na-trigger, mami. Doon na talaga yung, doon na ako pinasok talaga yung pag-work. You gave me hope. I remember yung experience ko sa isang company na discriminate ko. I got projects, I got freelance job, I am naging ambassador sa isang company. So those are some things na natutunan ko sa office.
Nag-join ako ng FH Moms last 2017 and that was the first year na nag-transition ako from corporate to working from home. So, nakita ko to sa Facebook as a mommy community for, like freelancers. So, that's why I joined. For me, FH Moms is really like a blessing. The group or this community made me realize my calling as a teacher. It's an honor to be part of this group, to impart what I know, and help other mothers out there as part of the goal of FH Moms. So, go for it.
In my job, there are many tasks. There are so many things that needs to be done in front of the computer. There's a lot of forms, paperwork, and also a lot of research. At the same time, being an event planner, I'm always on the go. And as a new company, it's also challenging whether should I hire an employee, like a regular employee, or should I just get somebody that's on call. Now, this is where FH Moms came in, like God sent. So when I hired one of the wonderful FH Mom members with the name of Katie, I was able to communicate to her what I envisioned my business to be, and she helped me to create a very positive branding of my business. So I would say having FH Moms as a support system for my business has been the best decision that I have ever made.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Can you see me? Can you see me clearly? Good evening, everyone. Mommy Jackie again here. And I'm happy to have our free webinar again one more time this month. And I would say it's actually Mommy Haiti and I tag team. We had a tag team basically to have a series of webinars for you moms out there. So I hope you were able to watch also the webinar of Mommy Haiti last week. She had a series of webinars, particularly about grammar. And as you all know, that's one of the skills that you need to master as a customer service representative. So anyway, I don't know if it's your first time to watch a webinar from FH Moms. If it's your first time, you can comment down below. Sorry for the note. Okay. You can comment down below where are you watching this video or this webinar from. And if you have any questions regarding our topic, feel free to write it down so I could answer that later on. Okay. So anyway, The name of our customer service training program is actually Customer Service 101. So I use 101 all the time to give you an overview about customer service, but honestly, I would say it's an in-depth discussion about customer service that you're going to go through in the Customer Service 101. Now, before we proceed with the main topic for today, let me define first what is customer service, because this is very important as we go through the next set of webinars and even the trainings that you will be undergoing should you enroll in Customer Service 101. So we've always said that customer service is the provision of service to customers before, during, and after a purchase, okay? And it says here that the perception of success of such interactions, this is between employees, meaning a customer service professional, and of course the customer. This would be dependent on who can adjust themselves to the personality of the guest, okay? And I believe for the most part, a lot of you would like to start working from home. And one of the common job opportunities out there as a freelancer or working from home would be a customer service representative position. I know there may be different titles, from chat support to email support to even an outbound call representative. And one of the things that hinder us from trying it out is the language proficiency part, particularly the accent, okay? So that's really our main topic for this series. So Mommy Heidi covered the grammar part, okay? And I will be covering the, I would say, the accent part of it, okay? So there. Now, always remember also that in customer service, for every customer that you will be interacting with, you will always be the company to them. So it doesn't matter what position you have, or maybe if it's your first day or if it's your 10th year on the job, for the customer, you are the company. And every time they call in, every time they email you, any kind of interaction basically that they would attempt doing, okay, they may only have one chance, and you as an employee of that client or that company may only have one chance to interact with that particular customer. Meaning, it is all in your hands whether you're going to end up with a positive impression about your company or your client, okay? You are the link between the customer and the company. Or in this case, for some of us, as a freelancer, you might end up being a customer service representative for a particular client. So maybe it's a small business, and how you represent your company, okay, will matter the most to every customer you will interact with. And you might only have one chance, as I've said. Okay, so I know there are a lot of people who are watching right now from all over the Philippines, and even I think there's someone also watching from Dubai. Okay, I don't know what time is it in Dubai, but anyway, so basically it means that every interaction you will have with your customers matter a lot, right? And we've also said earlier, as we define customer service, that it's all about how you adjust yourselves based on the customer's personality, okay? And as Filipinos, one of the things that probably we're struggling with is on the language proficiency part, okay? In the Customer Service 101 training program that we have, we separate the modules or the lessons into 4 sections. And the first week alone, part of it deals with you, the skills that you need to learn individually. And part of that would be language proficiency. Of course, when you talk about language proficiency, it encompasses grammar, even the accent part. And believe it or not, it's something that you can learn. So I know some of us find it intimidating. Like, for example, if you've been working in the Philippines for the longest time, and maybe your colleagues are not really requiring you to speak in English all the time, or sometimes you also speak in English at work, but you don't necessarily have to have a certain accent that you need to acquire, right? So sometimes we get intimidated by the position because we're required to speak in a certain manner because we're now going international, okay? And we will be dissecting a lot of some of the lessons. I'm not going to be able to cover everything because this is just 1 hour. Of course, if you're interested to learn more, you can go ahead and enroll in the customer service 101 class. Okay, so in the part of the first week classes that our lessons that we have in customer service 101 would be the language proficiency. And for this free webinar, we will be talking about just one of the sections of that lesson or series of lesson, and we will talk about particularly pronunciation, but not everything about pronunciation yet. We will be talking about vowel sounds in particular, and you might be surprised how come it's one section alone. Okay, but that's one of the main opportunities that we have as Filipinos. So it's very important somehow that you kind of master vowel sounds. Okay, it's also one of these things where you need to three things. Okay, learn, relearn, and unlearn. So I don't really know where you would fall among the three. You might have been doing this before. Maybe, I don't know, maybe back in high school or in grade school when you have English only campaign at school, right? And you get fined for speaking in Filipino or in Tagalog or whatever dialect that you have. And then maybe motherhood got the best of us. So some of us didn't really work for a long time. So it was a struggle for us. By the time that we tried or we wanted to try freelancing or working from home, the thing is you can get local clients where you're not required to speak in English and sound in a certain manner. But the thing is, if you try looking for an online job or a work from home, more often than not, you will be encountering foreign clients, right? And when you talk about foreign clients, that means that you have to adjust to how they speak, okay? And for most of your clients, Filipinos for them sound a little bit mechanical, meaning we usually, and this is how we were trained to sound anyway, right? When you read a word, I remember back then, like for example, if you're given a letter K and then you have a letter A, you put them together, ka, right? So that's how we were taught to read words. We read words letter by letter, syllable by syllable. Now, hopefully, by the end of this series of training until Friday, you will have a few, I would say, fun exercises that you will be applying on your own, and that would also somehow improve what how you speak. Okay. Now, please don't forget also if you can review the free webinars that Mommy Haiti has given last week, which is more on the grammar part. It's hand in hand, right? The accent part goes hand in hand with the grammar part. Okay. So let's proceed. Now, before we proceed with the actual lesson on vowel sounds, let's define first our objectives for this particular lesson. First is, of course, we need to understand what does it mean when we say accent, right? Why do you need to sound American? Okay. Next would be how do you rationalize why do we actually need to have what we call the Midwestern accent? And of course, why do we need to somehow have that American accent on the job? Now, please don't get me wrong. Of course, if your client would be British or Australian, it is also good if you can start learning the British or the UK accent. But don't worry, because the accent that we're going to learn is more of a neutral accent. That's the Midwestern accent somehow. It's all across the US, actually, you have several accents available, okay? Meaning you can actually be a specialist, a linguistic specialist, I would say, if you try to learn all the accents in the US. But the safest would be the Midwestern accent. Sometimes you can also call it the standard American English. It's the same accent that's being used by most broadcasters. So relatively, wherever you go, it's understandable. It's relatively, whether you're in, let's say, in the southern part of the US or maybe in the California side, or even in, I would say, even in the Europe side as well of the world, in Australia, if you have a neutral accent, at least, they will still understand you, okay? And of course, at the end of the day, most of us as a freelancer, you get to be interviewed by potential clients first. I mean, before you get to land the job, they have to interview first. Some of them will do it, let's say, maybe via chat, but more often than not, they will be doing it either through a phone call, right? Or maybe a Skype call with you. So however it is, I think If you are confident with the way you speak, whatever language you're being required to uh, speak, right? Then it will be, I would say, halfway to landing that job. The problem is sometimes we're not really that confident with the way we speak. So we don't even try to apply because at the end of the day, we feel like, okay, I think I myself, if I assess myself, I'm not good enough to even try this particular job. Okay. But the way I see it, if you always have the will to learn and you really like to land a certain kind of job, then of course you can go ahead and learn the skills that's needed, and part of that would be the way you speak. So from Wikipedia, just let's make it simple, okay? From Wikipedia, it says that an accent is a manner of pronunciation peculiar to a particular individual, location, or nation. So if you notice, even here in the Philippines, we have several dialects. And even if some of these I would say languages or dialects, they have some of the same words. I am not really sure with the other dialects, okay, because I'm a pure Tagalog, and that's the only other language that I know aside from English, right? And basically, you notice how Visaya people would have a different manner, even if the way they speak English is very different from someone who will be coming from, let's say, from the northern part of the Philippines, right? So it's the way we speak, and somehow how we sound matters a lot in terms of how we would be able to understand each other, right? That's why it's easier for someone from, let's say, a Visayan person to actually understand a fellow Visayan person. Even if you're talking about the same topic, you have the same words to say, somehow it makes it easier. It's all because of the accent, okay? Now, it also says there that an accent may be identified with the locality in which the speakers reside. So, for example, it can be a regional accent. We have a lot of those here in the Philippines, or maybe a geographical accent, okay? It can also be a socioeconomic status of the speaker. For example, this is kind of, I would say, evident in terms of, let's say, I came from an all-girls school, so some people actually think that that's the way most of the people of the same school come from, right? And sound. So if you come from this other school, it represents that you have to speak in this manner, right? For others, it can also be a way to represent their ethnicity, their caste, or social class. Case would be like the social class in India, right? So it talks about the social classes that we have, though. So it gives us a distinction between who is rich versus who is kind of, I would say, have an opportunity in life. Okay. And of course, there's an influence also from their first language. So in our case as Filipinos, I believe most of us wouldn't have English as our first language. Our first language would normally be our local dialect. So in my case, I grew up in the Tagalog area. I am from Muntinlupa. I was born in Laguna. I grew up in Rizal and Marikina. So it's all pure Tagalog, and that's the only accent that I have basically, okay? But I only got exposed with English basically in high school and in grade school, but it's not the usual accent that we use in customer service. Again, the way we were taught in English back then and in high school back then and in grade school was very different from how we actually train customer service representatives dealing with mostly either Americans, that goes also for UK and Australian customers, okay? So anyway, so now that we know what is accent, what composes accent, okay? There are actually three things that we study in Customer Service 101. First would be what we call intonation. Intonation is not totally different from what we know back in high school and in grade school. The only difference is how we apply intonation in our language. I remember back then in grade school, we were always trained to somehow greet the teacher as "Good morning, teacher." I know it's kind of funny when I sound that way, but that's really how we were taught to greet our teachers every time in the morning, right? And it goes as well that somehow because of that pattern, okay, or that speech music, we tend to adapt that same sing-songy intonation to everything that we say. hello, my name is Jackie, but it doesn't sound natural. So intonation plays a very big role in how we sound in terms of the accent. It's basically, as we said, it's speech music. So it's like, imagine that when you speak, they don't just actually hear the words, they also listen to how we sound, okay? Now, the next component of accent is pronunciation. Now, this brings clarity and what you're saying. I believe a lot of us Filipinos have, I would say, relatively some clear sounds, but there are also some confusing sounds, vowels and consonant sounds as well. Okay, and that's gonna be our main topic for this webinar series. So today will be vowel sounds. On Wednesday, we will talk about consonant sounds. And on Friday, we will talk about some exercises that you can do so that you get to improve also the way you speak. Now, the last part or the last component of accent is what we call liaisons or word connections. This is kind of different from what we know because this is not something we learn or we have learned probably back in high school or in grade school. Now, I don't know about you, but in my case, when I was when I was still in high school and grade school, I don't remember learning about liaisons. I only knew about liaison officers like that, but I don't really know that it applies with language. So liaisons would be word connections, okay? Word connections meaning some of the sounds are altered and words are connected. Like, for example, sometimes you hear instead of lots of, lot of, for example, you say lotta, right? Or maybe sometimes instead of saying up on a tree, upon a tree. So you kind of connect the words together so that it sounds like one word or they're interconnected. That is liaison, okay? Now we won't be tackling intonation and liaison for this free webinar, but that's all part of the customer service 101 class. Now for now, let's focus more on pronunciation, okay? So let me know if you have any questions, by the way, okay? So, for the Filipino speakers, and I think you could all agree with this one, we only know 5 vowel sounds. Am I right? Of course, I can't hear you, but you can put maybe a thumbs up or, I don't know, react in the comments down below. We only know 5 sounds. A sounds like a, E sounds like I sounds like e, and then of course O is o, U is u, right? Or u. So a, e, o, u. That's the only 5 vowel sounds that we know. But in the English vocabulary, we actually have 14 sounds, okay? And we have a lot of opportunity in terms of, let's say, the S sound. Sometimes the R is also something that we struggle with. L can sometimes be short. And we will talk about this one, the schwa. It's a new sound that some of you may not really be familiar with. And it's actually the most common vowel sound in the English, I would say, phonetic guide, okay? And then, of course, you have the letter D, the letter T. You have the B versus the V, the F versus the P. And you also have, it's not here, but you also have the TH sound, right? So we can dissect all of these sounds. So at the end of the day, you would be able to, I would say, improve yourself, okay? And then, of course, the letter A, since we only know in the Philippine English language, we only know A to sound as A, right? So you like put K and A, you make it ka, right? But in fact, in the English language, there are several ways to pronounce the letter A. You have the AE sound A. Okay, I know some of you might think it's funny the way I open my mouth, but that's really how it is. You have the egg A. You see that letter A with 2 dots up in the upper part. That's the egg A sound. Okay, and it sounds more like you just drop your jaw and say ah. Okay. And then you have the inverted letter E is your schwa, okay? I would say the schwa is a very tricky sound, but it's basically, it's like a very quick UH, okay? It's a sound that you use when a vowel sound, and this applies not just to the letter A, but it also applies to the letter, all vowel sounds, okay? And it only means that if a vowel sound is not as significant, you can drop it off and the word will still sound the same. You can replace that vowel sound with a schwa. Don't worry, I know it's kind of confusing. We'll discuss that in more details in a while, okay? So just the letter A alone, if you notice, there are several ways to pronounce it, right? And the important thing basically for you is first and foremost, understand where you need to work on. So I know very sure that, you know, you can read any piece of writing, maybe a paragraph or an article or maybe a book, have your phone recorder, okay? And then listen to your recorder, and maybe from there you would know what are the common letters that I'm struggling with so that I don't sound too mechanical, okay? So let's proceed. Let me know if you have any questions. So again, this is just a Venn diagram of the sounds or the English vowel sounds. So the Filipino and the English vowel sounds, they only have 5 common denominators, right? So the a, e, I, o, u. But when you talk about the English, it becomes a very, I would say, a very broad world, okay? So you see there's more sounds in the English language when it comes to vowel sounds, okay? Now, for vowel sounds, we have what we call unrounded and rounded vowels or vowel sounds. Basically, this is dependent on how you open your mouth, okay? Unrounded meaning your lips, basically, your this part of your mouth, basically, will not look like a rounded shape, right? So, e. So it's like you're smiling. It's wider. I don't know what shape is that. So I guess that's why it's safer to just call it the unrounded vowel sounds. And then you have your vowel sounds that are rounded. Basically, you form a round shape with your mouth. So you have your o and u, right? So it just depends on how small you open your mouth. Basically, that will differentiate the different sounds that will come out of your mouth. Okay. So again, you have your A, E, I, O, E, I, O, and U. Okay. Now, one of the main opportunities that we have as Filipinos is that I think it comes with, I don't know if it's culturally influenced, but maybe a little bit of it is. We are often prompted to speak in a manner where you don't open your mouth too big or too wide, right? Now, when you do that, sometimes you end up pronouncing the words wrongly, okay? Particularly the vowel sounds. So, for example, and I don't know if you can see this part, but you could probably see the difference, right? Your typical Filipino English A would look like this when you produce that sound, ah. It's not as big, right? Ah, okay? But when you use the AE sound, you have to, whether you like it or not, the only way you can produce that sound is if you open your mouth a little bit wider and smile a little bit. Okay, so you say ah. I mean, even if I try to produce that sound, but I will still open it the same way I open my mouth when producing the Filipino English ah, I will never be able to produce the AE sound ah. Okay, ah. You see the difference in the way I open my mouth? That means that how you open your mouth will influence the clarity of your vowel sounds. Okay, I always say it's clarity because usually words differ mostly because of their vowel sounds. There's a clear distinction between some words when you differentiate the vowel sounds clearly, right? Whereas the consonant sounds, usually it has to be clean. It has to be crisp, okay? It's something that you cannot confuse or interchange with the other consonant sounds, okay? So here you see for just 3, okay? Just the 3 first, okay? You have your AE sound. The AE sound is a, as in mat, map, patch. You see how I open my mouth? When I open my mouth, it's a little bit wider than usual. Maybe in the Filipino way of saying it, I would say mop, potch, right? And that's not the way you do it, okay? Sometimes when you're timid, you feel like you can't open your mouth too wide. And if you don't do it that way, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to produce that that correct sound. Unless you have a talent in I forgot that word, ventriloquism. That's basically a talent where you're able to use a puppet. I think some of you have watched that. You're able to use a puppet and you're able to talk without opening your mouth. If you have a talent with that, then maybe you don't necessarily have to open your mouth wider to produce the correct sound. Otherwise, if you don't have a talent in that, then open your mouth the right way. Now, it takes conscious effort to actually do this if it's the first time that you're doing it. But eventually, if you use it or you do it all the time, it becomes integral for you. It becomes a part of you to a point where you don't necessarily have to think about, okay, is this an AE sound? Is it an egg A or a long A sound? And so on and so forth, okay? So the AE sound, when you look in the dictionary, is represented by a letter A and a letter E right next to each other, okay? And then you have the long A sound. Now, all long vowel sounds will have will basically be the name of the letter. Okay, that's the how you pronounce it. So a long A sound means A. Okay, and A, still the same thing. You have to open your mouth wider too. So like day, fade, made. Okay, so it's symbolized by a letter A and the line above it. Now, the egg A sound is symbolized by a letter A and two dots above it. So here, it's sometimes used also with the letter O. You basically just drop your jaw like that, okay, okay, and you say father. Of course, the letter A in father, okay, that's the egg A part. Father, lard, dart, okay. These are words that have the egg A sound, okay. Now, you can look up words in the dictionary for their phonetic pronunciation. So, you know, you'd have a guide. Okay, so this is how I read this word, okay? Now, so let's dissect each of the sounds. So let's work on the AE sound first, okay? So to pronounce the AE sound, you simply drop your jaw. I hope you can, I don't see you, but I hope you can do it on your own. Okay, you simply drop your jaw as if saying the egg A sound okay, but then from there you go and you try to say the eh. But in reality, when you say this in a word, you have to be very quick. So you say ah. Okay, now I can't hear you and I can't see you. You're actually doing it, but you can try doing it, and it's like smiling while saying the letter A. Ah. I hope you're practicing it, okay? Please note that this AE sound is not two separate vowel sounds, meaning you can't say it as ae. No, that's wrong. It has to be one sound, ah. And I don't know if you can see it from my camera, but basically if you see it, my mouth is a little wider than usual, right? Okay, and it's just like how it says there, the sound of the goat, that the goat makes. So, meh, okay, I know I look funny, but that's really how it is. Okay, so make sure that you open your lips and make it spread. If you're a shy person, I know as a shy person, normally you don't speak, you don't open your mouth too wide. We associate being Maria Clara and everything to not opening our mouths too wide, right? But in this case, you know, at first, maybe you will find it awkward that you're opening your mouth a little bit wider. It's just conscious effort in the beginning. But when you do it all the time, for sure, you don't even think about it anymore. And it's not as obvious that you're opening your mouth too wide anyway, okay? It's just the first part, I guess, because you're kind of used to saying the Filipino English A. So everything is like mat, right? What's the other word? You can say probably, let's say, mat, bug, okay? So if you notice that sound actually is close to other vowel sounds, and it doesn't sound like the usual AE sound, the correct sound, okay? Let me know if you have any questions, okay? So these are just some of the words that you can practice the AE sound on. For some of you, you can try it on your own as I can't hear you and I can't see you, but you can go ahead and practice it on your own while I try to read them also for you, okay? And notice how my lips will be moving. They basically have the same, I would say, size, okay, in terms of the opening. The only difference here, of course, will be mostly the consonant sounds. So you say damn, lamp, camp, ham, ant, class, gas, jazz, ass. It's like I'm smiling, right? Flask, casual, gather, finance, cat, match, fat, scan, snack, scrap, clamp, grasp, tamper, captain. Okay, rap, animals, apple, cat, answer, dancer, band, fan, transform, ma'am, patch, anger. Now you can practice this on your own, so that, you know, there are a lot of words that have the AE sound. So you can have a lot more words to practice, okay? Now, you can, of course, the trickier part would be to combine it with other words that have different vowel sounds, okay? So in this case, for the first sentence, the AE sound applies for the word asked, gather, and apples, okay? The rest will have a different sound, of course. So mom is an egg A. Some is also an egg A sound. Of course, the 4 is an O. And of course, the letter E in dessert will also be not an A sound, but a letter E sound. So you say, mom asked me to gather some apples for dessert. So for the next part, okay, the AE sound here would be as. So you say, submit your report as soon as possible. Now, I may be exaggerating on the word as. In reality, of course, when you say that, you don't necessarily have to stress on it. But the thing is, if you're learning that particular vowel sound, I would rather that you start first with stressing some of the sounds that you're struggling with. So I'm not so sure if you're having a hard time producing that AE sound. If you are, then go ahead and stress on that sound and slow down a little bit so that somehow, you know, you can focus more and put more effort into it. A lot of times, the reason why we mispronounce some of the words is because we talk too fast, right? Okay, for the next sentence, here you apply the AE sound with dancer and band. So you say the dancer completely took the show from the band, okay? Next, this is a little bit tricky, but the AE sound here apply for lack, and then the first A in captain, the A in finance. So you say, due to lack of funds, the captain financed the team's uniform. Now, sometimes you get confused with alternating vowel sounds. So instead of saying due to lack of funds, you say due to lack of funds, okay? So it sounds very different. It sounds very awkward. For those, eventually, if you start doing exercises, tongue twisters and stuff, you will end up somehow your ears become a little bit more sensitive in the way you pronounce it. And a lot of times, actually, even if you haven't practiced it, you know there's something wrong with how you sounded, but you just can't pinpoint which one is, I would say, needs correction, okay? And then next, okay, for this one, the AE sound applies to the first word, Sarah, name, okay? So it's Sarah. So I know sometimes in Filipino, we call people with this name as Sarah, right? Like Princess Sarah, okay? But of course, remember again, that's the Filipino English A. So we need to shift to the AE sound in this case. So Sarah, and then you have lamp, and then you have ant, and then attic. So there's a lot of AE sound here. So if you're having a hard time because you're still struggling with doing or producing that particular sound, you can slow down a bit as you read this sentence and say, Sarah's lamp came from Aunt Anne's attic. Okay? So you can go ahead and practice several sentences with, you know, a combination of different vowel sounds, like a tongue twister. Okay? Now let's proceed with the egg A sound. So the egg A sound, the reason why it's called the egg A sound, you basically form like an egg with your mouth, okay? So here, just relax your tongue, okay? Of course, you can't see my tongue. Drop your jaw as far as down as it will go. So like that, okay? And then you can try it by combining it with some vowels, consonant sounds like M, P, T, and S. And you can even, if you want, you can put your hand under your chin so you can kind of control it. So you can say ma, pa, ta, sa, okay? Now, when you do that, your hand will automatically be pushed down by your jaw, like that, okay? So it is also similar, as they say, with the sound that you make when your doctor wants to see your throat. So ah, right? Ah, okay? So it's very simple. You don't open your mouth too wide. You just drop your jaw, okay? Now, the egg A sometimes also apply, by the way, to the letter O. So it's not just for the letter A, it also applies for the letter O. So let's practice. You can practice this with me. Again, I don't see you. I can't hear you. So I don't know if you're doing the exercises on your own, but you can go ahead and do it as well. Okay, so let's say father, hard, carpet, art, start, sardines, mark, lobby, olive. Now, wait, before I proceed with the next set of words, notice that it's not the same as the Filipino English A. And so I don't say father, right? So it's not father, it's father, okay? Darn, not darn, okay? Office. I think the letter O sometimes it's easier for us to say actually. Shark. So it's not shark, shark. Bark, arena, guardian, bond, copper, on, concert, lock, stock, cup, park. So it's not park, it's park. Heart, card, farm, barge. Okay, I hope that you can see the difference in the way I open my mouth. How you open your mouth basically dictates clarity in your vowel sound. So if you don't open your mouth the right way, you are likely going to produce a different vowel sound. So like what I've said earlier, park will sound like park. So there's a difference. Park, park. The Filipino English A is a little bit, I would say it's wider, but not as wide as the the AE sound, right? Okay, let's proceed. This is actually the fun part of training. A lot of the trainees in Customer Service 101 are enjoying this part, and I would say it's also a challenge, right? Because of course, after you've gone through the training, you cannot unhear what you have just or unlearn what you have just learned. I think for the most part, most of the trainees are very excited to apply the lessons actually, okay? So in this case, and it says here, remember that the air should be coming from the diaphragm. So that's a good way also to practice applying how to breathe from the diaphragm. Maybe I'll include that on Friday. I can teach you how to do it. It also helps you modulate your voice better. Modulation of the voice does not just apply in singing, it also applies in speaking, okay? And it helps you not to lose your voice, especially when you have like a speaking engagement and stuff, okay? Okay, so here, this is kind of like a tongue twister series of sentences because you have alternating sounds from the egg A and the AE sound. Okay, so in this case, for the first sentence, the egg A sound will apply with start and start. Okay, carpet is also an egg A sound. So you say start matching, so that's an AE sound. Start matching the carpet design. Okay, and then the next one is shark and shark, because carefully here is a long A sound as well as the last A in away. Swam here is swam. Okay, it's more of an AE sound for swam. Okay, So, but the first A in away is a schwa, which we'll later on discuss. Okay, so you say the shark carefully swam away from the fisherman. And then the next one, you have the officer in charge met with the employee's father. Next, the band started practicing for the concert. And of course, the last one, the X mark in the map led the farmer to the locked cabin. Now, if you're not as confident with your vowel sounds yet, I would suggest you try reading slower first so you can focus more on how you sound. But eventually, of course, when you say the same sentence maybe after maybe 10 times, it becomes easier for you to say. So it's like you can challenge yourself and talk a bit faster if needed. Okay? There you go. I hope you're learning a lot. If you're learning a lot, I hope you can give me I think a thumbs up or something or a comment down below so at least I know that you're learning something from me. Now, I think the easiest letter A sound, vowel sound, would be, of course, the long A sound. With the long A sound, all you have to do is simply say the letter A, right? So A, that's how you produce that vowel sound. So you say plate, agent, age, maid, matrix, maze, chaos, chase, sail, table, saber, atrium, able, aid, fade, alien, blame, sane. I hope I'm not too fast. Gate, game, shade, blade, fake, bake, hate, bait, raid, wade, and cane. Now, in the Filipino English, I think we still pronounce this with the long A sound. I remember we had the lesson on long A sound before. But that's basically what we knew of before. We had a long A and a short A sound, right? The short A is the A. So there we go. I hope you're learning a lot. Now this time, let's practice some more sentences, this time with the long A sound. And of course, you still have the other A sounds included. Because in reality, you can't just have just one vowel sound in a sentence. That's going to be a struggle. I think you can, if you're a creative writer, then maybe you can come up with a sentence with the same vowel sound, but it's kind of boring, I think, when everything sounds the same, right? So let's proceed. So the first sentence here, you have agent and age. That would have the long A sound. So you say, I told the agent that age doesn't matter, okay? For now, don't worry about how I say some of the consonant sounds. Okay, the consonant sounds, we will be tackling that on Wednesday. Okay, so because some of you might think, okay, why is she pronouncing some of the consonant sounds differently too? We'll talk about that later on. Okay, next. In the next sentence, the long A sound applies in same, gate, and came. Now, Hannah is actually a AE sound. Hannah, no. I would say the last A sound here is a schwa, which we'll discuss later on. Okay, and then of course that is more of that is more of a that is an AE sound. See, sometimes you still have, you don't necessarily have to memorize everything. You have to, when you practice reading some words, so you would the way for you to know the right pronunciation of it sometimes would be to practice saying it in several ways, and you can gauge which one sounds better. Of course, usually the one that sounds better usually is the one that's correct, right? So in this case, for the second sentence, you say, Hannah and I entered the same gate. That's how I came to know her. Now, don't forget that if you have semicolons or maybe commas and periods, you have to make sure that you put a pause at the end and you sound like you're pausing, okay? That's part actually of the lessons on intonation. Next, in this case, the long A sound applies for blame and relaying, and the last one, message. Although sometimes the A in message can be a schwa, okay? So please don't blame me for not relaying the message. Unless, of course, you're stressing on the word message. So maybe there's something about the message that makes it all different or makes the sentence all different. Next, you have 80 finished an entire rack of spare ribs and baked potatoes. Next, you have I never mentioned this age. That's how I made the sale. So again, if you're struggling with producing the right vowel sound, slow down a little bit and maybe, after 10 times of practicing the same sentence, you will definitely sound better. Okay? Now, let's go. This one I think maybe I can share it, but this is a story. You can go ahead and Google the ant and the grasshopper. This is an exercise that you can apply the different vowel sounds, particularly the letter A. It is a story, but it can be a tongue twister for you, right? Because it's using alternating sounds from AE to egg A and the long A sound. Now, of course, when you read it to, let's say, for a kid, I know some of you already know the story about the ant and the grasshopper, right? When you read it, and you can, I know most of us are moms here, right? And I did this back then when I was starting out as a customer service representative. I think, or was I a trainer? I think I was already a trainer back then. And my son at that time was about, I think, 3 to 5 years old. I forgot. Wait, I think it's 2006. He was around 4 or 5 years old. So sometimes I would read him some stories, right? And you can also do this with your kids. So this is a great way for you to have a bonding moment with your kids, but at the same time, improve your skill in speaking. So maybe I can go ahead and let me see if we have, what time is it? Okay. For this part, I think it's much better if you go ahead and Google this one because I want to make sure that I will be able to tackle the rest of the vowel sounds. Okay, you can go ahead and Google the ant and the grasshopper and make sure that you apply the right A sound, A vowel sound, as you read this story to your kids. Okay, now let's proceed with the letter E. So most often than not, we confuse the long E sound and the short I sound. Okay, the long E sound, just like the long A sound, is produced by pronouncing the name of the letter. Okay, so all you have to say is E. Now, if you want it, if you want like a cheat sheet somehow, you can read it as like a letter I and a letter Y together. So it's kind of longer. So you prolong the I sound and say E. Okay. So you need to also open your mouth a little bit wider because if you don't open it as wide enough, you most likely will produce instead a short I sound. Okay. E. E. So it's like, I don't know, a fake smile. E. Okay. So again, you just pronounce the name of the letter. That's how you produce it. So every time you see a word that has a long E sound, you say the letter E. E. Okay, it's longer. So you say secret, arena, senior, medium, rebate, regal, people, deal, degree. Of course, for the word degree, the long E sound applies with the EE. Most of the time, the EE, the EA will always have the long E sound, right? So make sure it's longer because sometimes if you don't say it the right way, you will, like for example, if you don't read beach, the place where we enjoy summer, right? And you say it with a wrong vowel sound, you will say a different word. And for foreigners, the counterpart with a short I sound is usually connoting a negative word. So be careful the way you speak or the way you say your long E sound. Make sure it's longer than usual. So imaginary, maybe you can read it as an I and a Y together. I-Y. So flee, tea, see, be, feast, seal, beef, beer, league. So it's like you're kind of faking your smile somehow. So it's wider. Okay. I'm not going to finish the rest of the words. You can go ahead and look for more words that have the long E sound. Again, when you read it, it's like you're imagining an I with a Y at the end. So it's like a longer letter I. Okay. But it's basically the name of the letter E. E. Okay. Now let's talk about the short I. Now, I guess for this part, it's much better if we go for some examples instead of the definition on how to pronounce the letter I. But it's a lot easier. It's not as stressed, by the way. Now, for the short I, imagine when every time you see a short I sound, you read it as I with an H. So it's kind of faster than a long E sound. So eh. So you say wiggle, filter, silly, women. So the O there is actually a short I sound. Villa, clipper. Of course, the letter E in clipper is not a short I, okay? It's the I. Wink, wig, silk, instant, visit, 60, give, kiss, rib. So just be careful again on how you say some of these words like rich instead of reach, right? So reach is different from rich. Fill is different from feel. Fit is different from feet. Bliss, of course, is not the same as bless, okay? I don't know if there's a word bliss. No, there's no such word. Build, okay? Impact, income, image, if, igloo, itch. So itch and each, those are two different words too, okay? And then you have inch. So notice how when you read the short I sound, it's like reading an I and an H. But it's very quick compared to the long E sound where you kind of read an I and a Y together. So E, okay? Do you see? I hope you also see the difference in the way I open my mouth. There you go. Now, let's talk about the most common sound in American English, which is the schwa. And I think a lot of us are not really familiar with the schwa. So it says there that whenever you find a vowel that can be crossed out and its absence wouldn't change the pronunciation of the word, you probably have found a schwa. In other words, you can think of schwas as vowel sounds that are negligible, meaning they're not as important and they will still sound the same anyway if you drop the sound, but it's not the absence of the sound, okay? There's still a sound, but it's not as importantly produced, so that's why it's replaced by a schwa. Now, when you see it in, let's say, the dictionary, it is represented by an apostrophe. Of the apostrophe. So like in this case, you don't say photography, you say photography. Photography. So the first O and the letter A is replaced by a schwa. It will still sound the same. You will still understand me when I say photography, right? Or comfortable. So for comfortable, the first letter O is a schwa, comfortable. Okay? Or maybe chocolate. Chocolate. So the second letter O becomes a schwa. There's some kind of sound, but it's not the O that we know. Okay? So it's not about, it's about. You know there's a vowel sound, but it's not as the usual letter A sound, right? Or maybe the E in synthesis. So it's not synthesis, it's synthesis. Okay? I don't know, maybe it goes against with the fact that sometimes mostly foreigners actually speak faster than we do. Because remember, again, we were trained or taught to read words word per word, syllable by syllable, letter by letter. In fact, I think back then we were trained to think that every letter counts, right? So there has a purpose. There must be a purpose why you place that letter in that word. So meaning that word or that letter should be pronounced, even if it sounds weird sometimes, right? Now I think the schwa is actually I would say the culprit as to why some are not as good with spelling. Because imagine if you're not really hearing the correct vowel sound that we usually know of, like you don't hear the letter A in about, then you can get confused as to how to spell the exact word, okay? So you have, instead of decimal, you say decimal. You know there was a vowel sound in between the C and the M, but it was not as obvious. And you have harmony, harmony. Okay? Medium, syringe. Okay? So notice how, and you can experiment on several words. If again any of the vowel sounds can be dropped off and it will still sound the same, you can replace it with a schwa and make it a schwa. So the schwa is represented by an upside down E. So when you see it in a dictionary, it's an upside down E. Okay? Sorry. Sorry. Is only found in unstressed syllables. It makes sense. That's the reason why you're replacing it with a schwa. When you say unstressed syllables, meaning you're not emphasizing that syllable. Now, of course, if you're emphasizing that syllable or that word, then you can't replace it with a schwa. You have to use the usual pronunciation, okay? But again, if the word is not as important and that vowel sound is not as important, it will still sound the same. Then you don't have, then you can replace it with a schwa. Okay. Sometimes you can also the schwa replaced by in the dictionary. You can see it represented by an apostrophe. So they say that schwas can be kind of lazy. It's associated with laziness somehow, right? Only because you're not saying that particular vowel sound. You're dropping it off. So it's kind of like a lazy sound. So instead of saying chocolate, right, you say chocolate. And instead of saying camera, you say camera. Or interest. So not interest, right? So you say interest. And you, instead of saying several, you say several. So the letter E, the second letter E becomes a schwa. And it still sounds the same, several versus several, right? I hope I make sense to you. Now, next, the schwa is neutral, but it is not silent. As I've said, you don't necessarily take out the sound. You replace it with another sound. It sounds more of like an okay, a very quick in fact, okay? So it's not like with the long O in code. So the letter E there is not a schwa. It's a silent E. So silent E is not the same as a schwa, okay? So like in the word code, so you see, since you see the letter O with a bar above it, that means it's a long O sound. Remember, a long vowel sound will always mean or always be read as if you're reading the letter. So O, long O is O, right? So again, it's like an a very, very, very quick right? And it's almost negligible. It's not as obvious that you actually said it, but there was some kind of sound when you say that particular vowel sound, okay? So, and this is something that you can do. You can put your hand on your diaphragm right here. I don't know if you can see it. I know you can't see it using my camera. And I think I might have a hard time showing it to you. But you can put your hands a little below your chest area, somewhere in the middle, in the upper portion of your tummy, right? And you can hear it when you say it. It's like you're just having a grunt escaping from your chest, okay? Now, don't move your jaw, tongue, or lips. You just simply say, uh, okay? Now, of course, again, if a word is stressed, then sometimes you don't use a schwa because you're stressing on a word, meaning there's something about that word that makes it important, okay? So if it's important, then you have to say every letter or every sound in that word. So you can't replace it with a schwa. Okay, so for example, in applying the different pronunciation, how you stress on certain words and where you apply the schwa or a particular way of pronouncing the vowel sound will make a difference. So for example, you can say, I can do it versus I can do it. So there's a difference, right? I can't do it, I can't do it. I can do it, I can do it. Do you see the difference? Right? Or I can't do it, I can't do it. So if you stress on a certain word and you pronounce it and stress on a particular word, it makes it extra, I would say there's an extra notch to what you're saying. So instead of saying, let's say, I can do it versus I can do it. That's the positive and the extra positive. So you see how the difference in how you pronounce certain vowel sounds and stress on the words will make a difference in what the sentence. You're using the same sentence, but they sound because of the way you sound or deliver it. Remember, as they say, it's not just about the content. Context is also important. So it's not just about what you say, it's also how you say it. So you can say, I can do it. That's just positive. But if you say, I can do it, so it's like exaggerated way of saying can, right? It's extra positive. And you say, I can't do it versus I can't do it. I hope you can see the difference in the way I say it. But basically, when you emphasize on can and can't, it makes it either strongly positive or strongly negative statement. Okay? There you go. So schwa can be applied in different vowel sounds or vowels for that matter. So it can be the letter A, it can be the letter E, it can be the letter I, it can be the letter O, it can be the U, and even, of course, the letter Y, because sometimes the letter Y sounds like the letter I as well, right? So analysis, Pennsylvania, okay. Now you can go ahead and look up some of the other words that may have the schwa sound. Again, if a word or a vowel sound can be dropped off and it will still sound the same, you're not completely dropping it off. You're replacing it with a very quick okay? So pleasant, again, balloon. Now, sometimes the schwa also makes a difference when you're now connecting words together. And that's what we talked about earlier regarding liaison, okay? So these are just some of the words. I think we're running out of time, but you can go ahead and look up for more words that has the schwa sound. And usually, again, if you can find any of the vowel sounds that wouldn't really make a difference if you don't exaggerate or pronounce clearly, then you can go ahead and replace that with a schwa. So again, that's the reason why the schwa is the most common vowel sound in the American English language. Okay? I hope you're learning a lot. Okay, now, so the schwa is again represented by an inverted letter E. It's not stress. That's why they find it, you represent it as a cool vowel sound. So relax, chillax, right? That's the schwa. So be like schwa. So with that said, I hope you learned a lot from tonight's webinar. This is just the vowel sounds. We will still be talking about consonant sounds on Wednesday and some exercises on Friday. But before we go ahead and stop this screen sharing, right? I'm going to go ahead and open the floor for some questions. Do you have any questions? Questions? Go ahead. Do you have any questions? Do we have any questions? Enjoying the lesson here, even my grade 8. Oh, yeah. Mommy Roselle, I hope that your kid would also, or your daughter, right? Your daughter, she's grade 8. That's, how old is that? 14? 13? Okay. It's great because, it's actually easier when they're younger. They're like absorbent sponges, right? They're easier to absorb these things. And I think it's much better if they actually learn this as soon as they can, because it takes years for you to get used to saying words this way. Again, I think in our usual curriculum in school, we don't really say words that way because we're not really required to do that anyway, right? I mean, if you're working with a Filipino client or working for a Filipino employer, more often than not, you actually scrap out English in your vocabulary. Am I right? I mean, on a regular basis, do you actually speak in English at home? Well, you could do it if you want to, if you're really serious about it. Or if your kids happen to have English as the first language, as their first language, then I guess that's okay, right? But I think there's no harm in, I would say, learning these things. It makes it actually, what I tell my trainees is that it really depends on, sorry, it really depends on how what type of customers would you like to engage with? Okay, sorry. I just need to read this comment. My daughter is also listening and we're both learning at the same time. Thank you, Mommy Mel. Okay, how do I pronounce your second name? Yeja. I like your name. Mel Yeja Zemira. Okay. So anyway, what's this? I think there's no harm, especially if your kids would eventually be going into, let's say, maybe impromptu speeches or any public speaking engagement. Um, and when I was starting out, I've always believed that I've had the perfect pronunciation. I mean, not really perfect, but somehow it's acceptable pronunciation. After all, I was a science or a chemistry graduate, so we use a lot of English with our reports and stuff. But I realized that there's nothing really wrong with learning these things because it gives you a broader, I would say, audience to speak with, right? And the way I see it is it really depends on what kind of client would you like to cater to, right? I know it sounds a bit too practical, but I think it's really how it is. For example, if you want to earn Philippine peso, right, then you don't have to really sound American dollars or to learn how to speak this with that particular accent. You can just settle with the, I would say, the Filipino English way of saying things, right? Because after all, at the end of the day, you're still going to be earning, and that's your goal, to earn Philippine peso, be employed with a local employer, and you don't have to sound international, right? You just have to sound local. So I guess that will work for you. Now, if you want to go international, you want to have more exposure, you want to have more, I would say, not just exposure, but also the confidence to apply to any particular client, be it they're American, be it they're UK, or maybe they're Australian clients, or like for your kids. I know some of you moms out there, you are maybe, it opens a lot of opportunities for your kids too. Like maybe in the future, they may have a potential to have I would say, a scholarship abroad, right? And you have to get them ready as well in terms of that. Because the thing is, sometimes you have I would say, the knowledge, you may have all the, I would say, the medals and stuff. I mean, in terms of the knowledge, you already have it. But then what makes us not so confident is the way we speak with, I would say, with foreigners, right? And I'm actually really very happy because the first batch of trainees, they were all scholars, because we were trying out our curriculum. And I'm happy to say and share with you that I was actually impressed with most of our scholar trainees, right? A lot of them were saying back then that I even had one trainee. I don't know if she's watching, but she mentioned in the comment, and that's the reason why I chose her to be a scholar. She said that one of the struggles that she had before was that every time she needs to speak with a foreigner, she feels like the only thing she can say is a yes or a no, right? Now, I kind of challenge her because in our class, everyone is actually required to speak in English. So it's an English only policy because I believe every one of us have the potential to learn English and be able to speak in a certain manner the way we want to. It all boils down to how badly do you want it. If you want it, then you can go ahead and learn as much as you can, challenge yourself and learn to be better. Okay. And of course, it gives you I would say, a more a bigger exposure, right? Okay, let's see. Thank you also for tuning in. I know I'm really happy that you learned a lot from tonight. I can't wait for the next series, or no, not series, the next webinar that's on Wednesday. Wednesday, we'll talk about consonant sounds this time, okay? So in our customer service 101 class, I actually get to require trainees to submit recordings to me, and I listen to their recordings word per word, so I would know what specific sound they need to work on. Because more often than not, they usually have the same pronunciation slips. Meaning, for example, if you're really having a hard time with the letter A, particularly the AE or the egg A sound, that would come across whether you're saying, let's say, a sentence or it repeats itself, right? Now, based on my assessment for most of my trainees, if you apply conscious effort, like what I said earlier, if you really want to learn, you can read some sentences and try to start first reading it slowly until you become comfortable and you become more confident in saying it in a certain manner. And then eventually you can say that sentence or that word faster without any pronunciation slips. Then you can go ahead and do it all the time, right? Now, you just need to make sure, like just like a doctor, right? You need to be able to diagnose what you need to work on, whether it be a vowel sound or a consonant sound, okay? So, but don't forget, I hope that you could also watch or maybe have a preview of Mommy Hades' webinar last week, because she talked about grammar. That was our agreement. She'll talk about, I would say, the letter of the language, and this is more of like the spirit of the language, right? The spirit of the language is your accent part, right? It's what gives it life. So remember, it's not just about what you say, but also how you say it. Okay? Are there any questions? So I hope you can practice some more and learn a lot more. Now, it takes really a lot of conscious effort and practice, practice, practice for you to get used to saying words this way. Being a scientist myself, I was a bit technical. So the way I defined words before, the way I read words before, I was really more of your typical Filipino English way of speaking, meaning I say every vowel sound, every consonant sound, okay? But I knew how to say the AE sound back then. So at least that part, I was good with that. But of course, along the way, I've learned that there's no harm if you can make yourself sound a bit easier to understand for American counterparts or clients, right? So there. Now, part of the lesson as well would be listening, right? Always remember that as you practice learning this on your own, expose yourself. I would really suggest you do this. Expose yourself with Filipino, oh no, not Filipino, to American English or native speakers. It can be maybe through watching a video or maybe a movie. And when I say watching a movie, you watch with your ears. You don't just watch with your eyes, okay? So you start being conscious with every time you hear any word, you have to be conscious about how each word is actually pronounced. That way, you train not just I call it your articulators right here, you also train your ears so that you yourself can judge or correct yourself when you sound weird, right? Okay, so I guess for now, if I'm not mistaken, nobody has a question. Am I right, Jean and Will? They're the ones helping me out in this broadcast. So if you don't have any questions, let's give it about a minute. Maybe some of you have questions. I appreciate the thank yous from you, mommies. I really do. Okay. Pero Tagalog ako, sige. Sa totoong buhay po, sa bahay namin, minsan ganito ako magsalita, Tagalog lang, di ba? Pero of course, when needed, I speak in English, okay? My son happened to start learning English at a young age. I would relatively say that was his first language, even if he grew up here in the Philippines. Mainly, it was because of watching cartoons. So he was able to acquire somehow the accent from cartoons. So we kind of had. So people thought that the reason why he speaks that way is because I was a trainer already back then in the BPO industry. But actually, more than that, it was really something that he has learned from cartoons, right? So, but in a way, we kind of supported each other. So as he learned, continuously learned, I was also learning. So, and often than not, we are able to speak to each other in I would say, in a clearer manner in English. So we kind of got used to speaking this way sometimes. But of course, I challenge him to also speak in Filipino as if needed. Okay. So Jean says there's no other questions for tonight. I hope that you really learned a lot. Feel free to comment if you have other questions. And that's it for tonight, I guess. I'll see you on Wednesday and we'll talk about consonant sounds. I'm also excited to share with you how consonant sounds and how consonants sound, right? And how different, I would say, or I would say unique at times, these consonants would be when you apply it in the American English accent. Okay, so for now, I guess that's it. Thank you for attending this webinar. I hope you learned a lot and have a great day. God bless you all. Bye. Bye-bye.
Hi, my name is MK. I'm the founder of Filipino Home-Based Moms or FH Moms. What we do is we help Filipino mothers inside and outside the Philippines to get an online job, and now we are expanding to helping more Filipino mothers without access to the internet by giving them home-based livelihood opportunities.
Before kasi kami na nag-home-based job, parang living paycheck to paycheck kami. Sahod niya, oy, hati na agad yan yung matitira. Or nung nag-home-based na kami, doon nakapag-ipon na kami. Nakapag-church wedding kami. Tapos nagkaroon na kami ng savings. Nagkaroon na rin kami ng investments, tsaka insurance. Nakapag-bili na rin kami ng house.
Dito kasi sa pag nagtrabaho kami sa bahay, mas maraming time na, nga, sa kids, sa kanya. Kaya, ayun. Hanggang ngayon, masaya pa rin naman ako sa pag-online yun.
Since sobrang hirap, importante ko na talaga yung talag-talag ng job, na-experience ko na rin yung discrimination sa work. Until October 2018, I was invited to be an inspirational speaker and you were one of them. So yun, na-meet kita. And then doon ako na-trigger, Mami. Doon na talaga doon na ako pinasok talaga yung pag-work. You gave me hope. I really remember yung experience ko sa isang company na discriminate ko. I got projects, I got freelance job, maging ambassador sa isang company. So those were some things na natutunan ko sa office.
Nag-join ako ng FH Moms last 2017 and that was the first year na nag-transition ako from corporate to working from home. So, nakita ko to sa Facebook as a mommy community for, like freelancers. So, that's why I joined. For me, FH Moms is really like a blessing. The group or this community made me realize my calling as a teacher. It's an honor to be part of this group, to impart what I know, and help other mothers out there as part of the goal of FH Moms. So, go for it.
In my job, there are many, many, many tasks. There are so many things that needs to be done in front of the computer. There's a lot of forms, paperwork, and also a lot of research. At the same time, being an event planner, I'm always on the go. And as a new company, it's also challenging whether should I hire an employee, like a regular employee, or should I just get somebody that's on call. Now, this is where FH Moms came in, like God said. So when I hired one of the wonderful FH Mom members with the name of Katie, I was able to communicate to her what I envisioned my business to be, and she helped me to create a very positive branding of my business. So I would say having FH Moms as a support system for my business has been the best decision that I have ever made.